tonight. Thank you, Virginia, also for taking care of the functioning of the technology and the recording and so forth. To give the context to this discussion, I think I myself studied political agroecology and then worked in nature conservation with the NGOs of NABU or also BirdLife International. And I think, for example, with the Agroecology Coalition, hold a great webinar just a few weeks ago on this kind of connections and the possible symbiosis of regenerative agriculture and agroecology. And we continued that discussion actually last week in Rome, where we had another event of the Agroecology Coalition, and we discussed also with Emil Friesen at length. And I think we have a lot of cross-inoculation potential. So the regenerative agriculture movement has a lot to learn from the political economic sophistication of agroecology, and also, of course, nature conservation has a lot to learn on soil health, on the role of humans in ecosystems for their regeneration and emergence. And I'm extremely happy that we have these amazing people here tonight. I mean, also, for example, from Vincent, I think the rest of Europe and the world has a lot to learn from France and what you're pushing there. We're always, I guess, a part of a few other countries. There's a language barrier where we want to service you also in helping to bring your learnings and achievements to the rest of the farmers so we can move faster there. And the same with Ellen on, I think, a lot of great papers on, for example, the CAP and where we could go in terms of fostering agroecosystem health through better alignment of agricultural, economic, and nature policy. With that having been said, I must apologize most genuinely that I cannot stay the whole evening with you, which is truly a tear to my heart, because I think Vincent knows that I'm a big fan and would love not to or miss a second of the possibility of intercourse with you. Without saying but, we have committed us also very much to having a discourse, facilitating a discourse among the farmers and the experts or other farmers in your case, to convene that discourse, to bring not only the voice of farmers to the table, but have the voice of farmers lead the discussions at the tables. And in that, we want to be practicing examples. And with that, I would give back to Anna. I hope that we can build and grow this evening more emphasis on how agroecology, nature conservation, Regenec can cross-inoculate each other, complement each other, and grow the real radical from the root, etymologically meaning transformation of our agri-food systems together, instead of being pushed in some kind of false competition or other kinds of parasitic relationships that actually none of us benefits from, but only those that we want to outgrow. So thank you, Anna, for hosting this discussion. And yeah, I'm excited to listen, at least for as long as I can stay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Simon, for that and for being the one to actually convene this conversation, because you brought in these amazing guests into the room. So I think since you've talked about Vincent, we're going to ask Vincent first, if you would be so kind to tell us about yourself and your organization and the journey that you're on towards ecosystem health, please.
Okay, so thank you very much for the organization of this meeting. It's really a pleasure to be with all of you yet. So I'm first of all a farmer, a vegetable gardener, in France. I have one of the first farm in France who make a transition between a grassland and vegetable without any tillage. And it is a kind of starting point of a big movement, a large movement in France called maraîchage sol vivant. So we call of no dig in English words, but it's not absolutely famous for the French community. So living soil, market gardening with living soil. And we have developed yet a nice network because I have learned from YouTube videos. I have discovered that a lot of skills about how the soil are functioning thanks to videos, and then we have continued with this movement to push all the knowledge directly on YouTube about earthworm, fungi, bacteria, but also cover crops, rotational grazing, conservation agriculture, for instance. And we have decide collectively to continue to organize training session with all the experts of agriculture and agroecology areas, and to continue to feed to feed us ourselves, but also the community with the YouTube. And we have created a second YouTube channel after the Maraîchage Sol Vivant one. So the second is Vers de Terre Production, so earthworm production in English. And this Vers de Terre Production knows today 15 millions of views on YouTube, only about agroecology, really hard content dedicated for farmer or technicians. And it's amazing to have this kind of numbers. And with that, we have tried to continue to build community, not only for market gardening, but for all kind of production. And we have all continued to organize training sessions. So I'm director of Vers de Terre Production, and we are organizing with a team of 25 people, training session everywhere in France. But we have not only this organization, we have also a big ecosystem of organization in France, which is absolutely nice. We have specialists for agroforestry, we have specialists for livestock management, or for arable crops, or for pruning in vineyard or in orchards. And we have decided also to put it or to make it visible. And for that, we have created cartography, maps. We have created also a big wiki for agroecology called Triple Performance. And there you can find, it's open source wiki. You can find every, so you can find maybe today maybe 50 farm portraits, and we want to go more and more and to describe exactly what is going on the farm, exactly understand what about the economic numbers, environmental results, the social assessment of different farms. And you can find it. I will put the links on the chat. Today it's mostly French content because we are working at the French level, and we continue this work to create common of knowledge, and we have for that created a national center of agroecology in France, and I am also the president for this organization. And we continue with team and also with fundings, public fundings, to develop all these dissemination and documentation activities. And we want also to make and to lead experimentation trials on the field with the pioneer farmers, with the champions, and not only, and with every people who want. So is what we have tried to do in France, and we continue to do that. And you can follow what we are doing using subtitling, automatic subtitling in YouTube. So you can go there.
Wow, Vincent, fantastic. Simon has been dropping a couple of links there into the chat so that people can find you. And please, please, please do share any other links that you want to direct people to. Because actually one of the things that came out of the last session was that people really want resources. They really want to know where to go. And you've really hit the nail on the head there with that, Vincent, because to offer people YouTube content is just so easy for people to watch from home, etc., obviously. So anyhow, we are building for that a space in which people can actually recommend these resources, and we can share them with everyone who's participating in these roundtables and way beyond. So it will be a pleasure to add your resources to that. And yeah, congrats for such amazing work. I have to say, from Spain, we're a bit jealous because I live in Spain. The French are just amazing at this stuff, and you just have so much going on and so much support as well from even public administrations, which is lacking in other places. So we have a lot to learn, and a lot to grow. Thanks for your contributions. Thank you. So let's go on to another farmer, Marco Carbonara from Italy, and an EARA founding farmer. Would you please tell us about your journey towards ecosystem health?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Marco Carbonara from Pulicaro Farm, from center of Italy. I live close to Bolsena Lake and Orvieto, in between the border of Lazio, Tuscany, and Umbria. We run this farm that is 100 hectares on this volcanic plateau at 600 meters on the sea level. As Anna was saying before, I'm an ecologist. I have a degree in ecology, and I started the farm with this idea that we should just facilitate ecosystems into farming. And we mostly decided to improve the quality of our soils and biodiversity, so practicing agroecology through groups of different animals on pasture. So at the moment we raise around 200 pigs and 12,000 of birds per year, plus 20 cow, plus 120 sheep and 50 goats, 4 donkeys, few geese, that really work with us in terms of, yes, they are productive from an economic point of view, but they are productive at the same time, and I would like even more, for rebuilding the quality of the soil, rebuilding the dynamics into the soil, water management, and so on. We live close to a very nice natural reserve that is called Monte Rufeno and Riserva di Montepeglia e Selva di Meana, plus Riserva del Lamone, plus Natural Reserve of Montamiato. We are surrounded from several natural reserves. And anyway, our area is really not so much populated. So also the parts that are out of the natural reserve are quite wild, with a lot of woodlands and forest. My focus today will be to try to share my point of view that agroecology and regenerative agriculture needs wilderness and helps wilderness at the same time. We use livestock guardian dogs for protecting the animals from the wolves and the foxes, weasel, any kind of predators that lives in the surrounding. And at the same time, we need the predators and we need the other animals for having an healthy environment around us. I will be more detailed maybe later if I will have the chance. But yes, we really think that there is just one ecosystem, and farms are part of the ecosystem, the regional ecosystem where you live. So yes, this is our point of view. We try to develop this in our farm. And we move these animals with electric fences, and we try to rotate the same animals on different plots and different animals on the same plot in different moments. There are a lot of things that are, let's say, quite delicate, quite critical. First of all, there is a problem of rules and policy in terms of veterinary authority that in general, doesn't look at pasture-raised animals as a resource, but sometimes they look at them as a risk in terms of biosecurity. We are so part of groups and associations also in Italy, like AIDA, the Italian Association of Agroecology, and with EARA, obviously, to try to, for providing a different point of view, supported by numbers, supported by scientists, that show has biosecurity, hygiene is not necessarily a synonymous of sterility. So how you can run a farm that will produce a safe and healthy food for humans based on different values like low density, high biodiversity, rich microbiota into the soil, rich microbiota into the gut of the animals, very rich pasture in terms of also nutraceutic plants, using phytotherapy as the only way for helping the animals that are a little bit out of balance. We don't use antibiotics on pigs and poultry since 10 years. We don't need it. It's not just because we don't want to use or because we are against antibiotics, simply because the risk of antibiotic resistance is the biggest, from my point of view, the biggest threat we face at the moment. So we started 10 years ago really decreasing them, even if we don't use them so much even at the beginning, and now we don't need them anymore. Since 10 years, we honestly think we don't have the necessity for this. So I didn't watch the time. I don't know if it can be enough for the moment. And I can
I think
let's
it's
back.
wonderful, Mark. Thank you so much. I would hand over to Max, who's really trying to break the ground in nature conservation, of opening the space and eyes of all those people working there to appreciate soil and soil health and soil for ecosystem regeneration, and at the same time appreciate and foster farmers for ecosystem regeneration, all kinds of farmers, and also an inclusivity to farmers which usually are not appreciated so much for attempting to regenerate our ecosystems while producing food and fiber.
Thank you,
Max.
Simon. And also, thank you very much for being here. My name is Max. I work at NABU, a large German nature conservation NGO. They're also organized in the European nature conservation NGO BirdLife, which you might know also, or which is maybe better known. In that, or at NABU, I work as a soil policy officer, focusing mostly on regenerative agriculture and whatever that is associated with that, also conservation agriculture. And in that, in my work as a soil policy officer at NABU, we operate at that triangle, that very complex triangle of science, society, and policymakers, and we try to advocate for these approaches, for example, regenerative or agroecological approaches. I mostly conduct studies such as with more unconventional partners, maybe the Boston Consulting Group, for example. We just published a study which tries to value the importance of soil biodiversity and puts basically a price tag also on that in order to advocate with it in the political space. On top of that, for example, I can promote the next study that is coming out next month on conservation agriculture. And in that case, we worked with farmers together, 17 farmers in Germany that solely worked with or on conservation agriculture. In that sense, I would say even regenerative agriculture, because they only have cropland, and they reached, or they have amazing results in terms of input reduction and therefore also regenerating their land. And very excited to be publishing that next month. I keep you posted. And prior, I studied natural resource management in my youth, or not that long ago, actually. Resource management, a very holistic approach, process-orientated, focusing on plant, soil, and water. And in the beginning, I was focusing on mostly the water saturated zone, the groundwater. But then later, I recognized the vast importance and the interesting ecosystem that soil is. And then I switched one or a few layers upwards into the unsaturated water zone and focused especially on soil and soil biodiversity, which opened new worlds to me. That's why I'm also very pleased to be in this of knowledge dripping group. And thank you very much again for being here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that beautiful succinct presentation, Max. Super interesting work you're doing too. And I'd like to pass on to another EARA farmer at this point. Nick Viney, would you like to introduce yourself and your own journey, fascinating, into biodiversity?
Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Viney from Devon. This is the far southwest of the UK, on Dartmoor, which is a sort of an upland area. It's common land, and these upland areas in the UK have very often succumbed to some serious biodiversity loss. The commons, where many farmers have rights to graze, and also kind of a post-industrial landscape from peat extraction, means that the hydrology of these areas are often severely compromised. So I've kind of worked, sorry, cat approaching. I've worked on these rangelands for the last 20 years, and then off the hill, I have a small farm on the floodplain, a bit further down the valley. So I'm very sensitive to what has gone on. A very high rainfall area, so we're 2.3 meters of rain a year, so a lot of rain, and we would be very good at growing trees if we didn't let everything eat them. So I became very interested in soil health. I've effectively turned our land into what I hope is kind of 50 acres of forest garden, really, is what I'm aiming for, in the terms of woodland pasture is what I'm aiming for, and I try to use livestock to improve my soil health to get us there. So this has been a journey of about 30 years now, and it was kind of accidental to start with. I grew up here, and for my youth, we overgrazed it. It was like a bowling green. We smacked all our hedges down, and and we were super interested in being tidy, and tidiness was really the pressure from surrounding surrounding farms, and you're judged on the tidiness. 30 years ago, I had 3 children under 1 year old, so things had changed very dramatically for me, and I had to stop. I had to destock and concentrate on rearing all these kids, and the land had a break for the first time in my lifetime and my family's ownership of this land, and it was really startling to see species like orchids returning that I had no idea were part of our seed bank. So I've always been interested in nature, but also been very interested in agriculture from a conventional sense, and this has been quite a tear for me most of my life in terms of how do I sort of not be disloyal to the conventional farming community that have raised me, but I have all these different ideas of how we should be doing things. So I'm in the UK, so we have no large predators. Sheep are not native to our country. I love sheep, but I understand how damaging they are if they are not well shepherded. So I put myself through, I'm actually an artist by trade as well, and always very interested in what I then learnt was permaculture design, and then on into holistic management, which really helped me galvanize my my kind of harebrained ideas of what I was coming up with in terms of grazing livestock and how you can actually restore soil health through well-managed grazing livestock. So that's been about a 20-year mission for me, and nowadays I spend most of my time trying to convince other people to do the same. We do tours here. I work with a lot of rewilders, which is a bit of a triggering word for a lot of people, but actually a lot of them want to keep livestock, so I try to encourage them to graze them well. And that has given me access to thousands and thousands of acres, which I hope to be accelerating their access into biodiversity uplift. And we have all sorts of schemes like biodiversity net gain, which are coming in, all these mechanisms to bring finance onto the land. So it's a difficult time, blending farming, rewilding, BNG, carbon, all these things. So it's been great to be part of EARA and feel across Europe like-minded people, and an incredible diversity of people who really have their heart in this, and are really trying to find solutions. So thanks for being here, and it's a real pleasure. So I look forward to the discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nick. And thank you for bringing forward that idea of diversity, of the huge diversity that there is amongst EARA farmers and all the people and farmers and many different types of roles that are trying to support the work towards better livelihoods and better lives for all living beings. And yes, unity and diversity is EARA's motto. We know that there's no two farms the same, no two people the same. And so it's about coming together around the things that unite us. And that's part of the idea as well of this session, of this conversation. So thrilled to be here and to invite our next guest, Alan Peters. Alan, to please tell us about your own long journey in this thing. I'm going to ask you to be brief because it is a long journey, but please tell us the highlights of this journey towards ecosystem health.
I will try, yes. Thank you for inviting me first, and I'm very pleased to be with you tonight. Greetings to you all, and notably to Nick Viney, because I lived in Devon in the past and I had a fantastic view from my living room on Dartmouth. Anyway, I'm an agronomist. I have been professor at the University of Louvain in Belgium for many years. Now I'm retired, but still very active. Yes, I gave many lectures, such as agroecology, farming systems, and so on. I started working on agroecology 30 years ago through an European research project. I think I had the first European research project on organic farming and then on agroecology. And I worked mainly with a group of pilot farmers at that time. And so I am a teacher and a researcher, but I care. 15 years ago, I started managing a farm myself, and a bit later a second farm. So I'm also a farmer in a way. And the idea was developing agroecological systems, and notably no-till organic systems. So it was quite successful. So some years later, I started training farmers, coaching farmers, including in the association on Vincent, earthworm production, when you can find also some videos from me in French, unfortunately. I'm still training many farmers. I'm regularly invited by a French group of farmers, for instance. The third step of my strategy, if you like, after developing agroecological system training, the third step was launched 3 years ago. I created an association for speeding up the transition of Belgian farms towards agroecology. We have 60 farmers in the group, but this number is growing very fast now. So that's some ideas. I co-created Agroecology Europe in 2016, and I'm still vice president. Regarding nature conservation, I created my first NGO in 1970, an association of young conservationists, and I'm currently president of WWF Belgium Communauté Francophone. That's some ideas. That's enough for the moment, yes.
Wow, thank you, Alan. Like really a whole history there of work for agroecology and for life and for non-toxic food production and more, beyond that. So wonderful. Thank you so much. It really is an honor. There's so many, all the work of everyone is so necessary, and to have people who've been working on this steadily for so many years is just an inspiration to everyone. But things also start small and get big, and to see that as well is an inspiration for young people and for younger generations. So we have an incredible set of people in the room. And last but not least, we have William Houston, who is also a veteran, also retired or retiring. The farmer never retires. And so please, William, tell us about your journey with Regeneration.
Hello, everyone. I'm William Houston from Scotland, pretty well the exact centre of Scotland. That's my home, you can see behind me. Right on the edge of the hills. I farm about 30 hectares here, split between grass and trees. And I farm closely with my brother, who has about 1,000 hectares higher up, where he has 1,200 breeding sheep, 160 cows, and about 80 deer, selling more and more directly to the customers. I've worked in farming and food around the world, really, based at home, but I've also worked with cattle in Canada and on the 400,000 hectare ranches in Venezuela. which were teeming with wildlife, both of them, managed very traditionally and grazed. I've also worked as a consultant in the Lake District Park in England, both on the farming, nature, having to combine farming, food, nature, and tourism, and seen how the land there is degrading through the various uses. Although you have to remember it's a national park now, but 200 years ago, it was full of mines for copper and lead and was in a much worse state than it is now. So I'm, as Anna said, one of the older members, and we have to keep a long-term view of what's happening, and be aware of short-term changes and longer ones. I also managed a 400-hectare soft fruit cooperative, all in polytunnels, very intensive. And that was really what made me realize what's happening to the arable soils of Scotland. The farms where our native breed, the Aberdeen Angus, was developed 200 years ago are now mostly without cattle. They're all arable, and they need more horsepower, more chemicals, more fertilizer every year, and are struggling. We're waiting at the moment for the Scottish government to bring in our new post-Brexit policy. We're still waiting, although we have to have a new policy in 2026. And so farmers aren't prepared to change at the moment in the hope that they'll be funded. But this year we've had a wet potato harvest, and the soil can no longer carry the large machines that are needed. And so people are starting to realize, and there are people bringing sheep back to graze their wheat, and some even bringing cattle back and bringing grass back to help restore the soil ecology. And also more trees, more hedges. You can see my landscape behind me. I'm quite proud we've managed to keep it mixed and traditional, and we see the benefits from it. In my work now, I know a lot of people here are involved in metrics and things, but my best metric is to, when I arrive at a farm, is to just take a moment when I get out of my car and listen to the bird song. The louder the bird song, the chances are the more profitable the farm, because they're spending less on chemicals, not going for yield, but going for profit, and which benefits the wildlife too. It's quite incredible. And on a wider scheme within Savory, we've now realized that you can't regenerate the land without regenerating the whole food system. So long as we're being pushed on price all the time by the supermarkets and being forced to create credentials to enable them to say they're doing the right thing, we're not. And the land will continually be pushed by farmers struggling to survive. We need to regenerate the whole food system in order to regenerate the land and the soil. And that's why I believe so strongly, all of us who work with nature have to work together. I probably shouldn't have said we work with nature. We're all part of nature, and we have to bring this realization to more people, that if we ignore nature for much longer, we are endangered as well as our soils. So that's really where I am. It's great to be involved with the EARA, and it's wonderful so many people are here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, William. With your experience, it's always wonderful to have that wisdom in the room, as well for the younger farmers of EARA. And yeah, that leads us on to a first question I'd like to put on the table for all of you, which is, how can we bring agroecology and nature conservation visions and practices onto 90% of European land and 90% of mindsets and the capacities of European farmers? How do you, who have experience in these movements, how do you think we can make that happen and make it widespread? What would you say, Alan?
Yes, I can start if you wish. Actually, I can summarize the idea by saying that agroecology demonstrates that land sharing is possible and desirable. That's the topic, I think. I told you I developed an agroecological system that includes a dense ecological network on about 5% of the arable area for developing the populations of natural enemies of crop pests and reducing pesticide use. And in this system, there are 3 different types of grass strips, specially designed for developing the population of natural enemies. Strips are distance of 60 meters and are 3 meters wide. And this changes everything. Grass strips can be combined, of course, with edges and other semi-natural elements, but they must have the priority for several reasons that we can discuss later if you want. But in conventional agriculture, if there is an ecological network subsidized, for instance, by the agro-environmental scheme on, for instance, about 5% of the arable area, that means that 95% of the surface remain hostile to biodiversity. And so this ecological network, of course, is useful, it's nice, but its efficiency is poor. In agroecological system, 2 practices are important for wildlife. Soil tillage is reduced, and this results in wheat and crop seed availability on the ground surface after crop harvest in summer, for instance. And there are more earthworms and insects for feeding birds because intensive soil tillage doesn't kill these animals. And the second important practice is that soil is also regularly covered by a complex mixture of green manure. They usually cover the soil between the beginning of August or end of July to October. And this biodiverse mixture makes also a food source for birds and insects. In organic no-till system, the existence of a dense ecological network, well designed, combined with these 2 practices, and no pesticide use, result in a 100% biodiversity-friendly arable area. That's even more than 95%, and it's much more than the 5% in conventional agriculture, for example. And that I could see in the several farmers I coached in Belgium, in France, and in the 2 farms I managed myself. If you do that, you have an explosion of life, particularly birds and insects, and that is very impressive. And in soil conservation agriculture, where similar practices are adopted and pesticide use is reduced, which is usually the case, a similar effect on biodiversity can be noted. In agroecological system, ecological networks and functional biodiversity are integral components of the agricultural production. They are assets for the profitability of the system. But interestingly, ecological networks that are designed for the population of natural enemies of crop pests attracts also other forms of biodiversity, such as patrimonial species, birds, plants, mammals, butterflies, and so on. And so with regard to land sparing and land sharing strategies, agroecology can really demonstrate that land sharing is possible and desirable. Biodiversity is really the engine of the production system in agroecology. It's the ecosystem services that are provided by biodiversity that makes possible to replace commercial inputs such as synthetic fertilizer and pesticide. And so we can say that agroecology is based on biodiversity, but it produces also biodiversity, including patrimonial species of the whole biodiversity.
Very interesting summary there, Alan. What about the animal side of things, the animal management? Maybe, William, you'd like to talk to us about that, since that's one of your also key tools, no, for regeneration.
That's
Go ahead. Did you want to say something, Alan?
No, I think that you asked the question to me, but there are other people.
Well, you're very welcome to answer that question first, and then we can go into William.
Okay, well, yes, in fact, crop livestock integration is a very important component of agroecological systems. I think that only crop livestock systems that integrate crop and livestock are really sustainable. Because if you don't have livestock, then you need synthetic nitrogen, for instance, for replacing farmyard manure. You need more synthetic herbicide for controlling weeds and so on. And so you need fossil energy. And the fact that we could, in the 1950s and 60s, separate crop and livestock production was because fossil energy price was low. And so the price of nitrogen, synthetic nitrogen and pesticides were low too. But in a world where the price of fossil energy will become more and more expensive, we have to prepare ourselves to a situation where the price of nitrogen, pesticides, and even fuel for tractors, for machinery, will become progressively too high. And we have to come back to more integration between crop and livestock. And that can be done in each farm, but also through the collaboration of farms specialized in arable crops and other farms specialized in livestock, and they can exchange nutrients matters. But for that, we have to develop also livestock systems that don't require too much work, because many people get rid of animals because it was too labor intensive, but it's perfectly possible to develop grass-based and simple livestock production system.
Thank you so much, Alan. I think that's music to our ears, because that's often animals are part of the equation that are forgotten or even chastised and criticized for being part of the problem. So it's all about, as they say, it's not the cow, it's the how, no? How the cow is moved. And so, William, would you like to talk to us about that? Bring back the cows, but how?
Well, all the time we're developing better systems of managing them, whether it's electric fencing systems that will open gates automatically, on smaller scale collars, GPS collars, which will do it. But also, if you're not having to pay for machinery and chemicals, you can afford to pay some wages occasionally to do this, because your costs stay in the community, paying local people to move your animals. The cost of machinery to produce winter fodder, when actually you could graze your animals year round, means that that could be better used for people. And people have diverse careers. That a lot of people who have a desk job but work from home welcome the opportunity to go spend an hour moving cattle for you or sheep for you once a day. We've got to become more open like that. And I saw there was a question about managing large volumes of rainfall here. The holistically managed grazing, where you're only grazing for 3 or 4 days every 30 or 40 days here, we don't get waterlogged fields, whereas our neighbors who are set stocking often have waterlogged fields. But it's not just the grazing, it's also, as Alan said, once you get rid of the chemicals, the wormers, the ivermectin, the soil comes back to life, the worms come back, and that increases the soil's ability to absorb rainfall. The dung breaks down quicker, so that you don't need artificial fertilizers. The roots get deeper, so they're pulling up minerals from deeper down, so you don't need other micronutrients in the soil. The soil starts providing them for you. And the bird life and the wildlife comes back. It is incredible to see the difference. And we're starting to see it. And similarly, the people who are grazing their wheat with sheep in the winter here are no longer needing quite so many chemical treatments, because the lush growth, which it's growing too quickly, and it's susceptible to disease. But if you graze that off with sheep, it's no longer there. The plant then puts more effort into growing to recover from this grazing, and the disease doesn't get in. But we're learning, and the big change that I find most difficult is getting people to actually look very hard and realize what they're seeing with an open mind, and not assume that because the chemical salesman told you it won't work, that it won't work. Once you develop a different perspective and you look for signs of success, you often see things you didn't expect, and you start noticing the things that you have to ask why, and you go and try to find out why. And it's one of the great things I see on the EARA WhatsApp group is people asking questions. I'm seeing this happening. Can anyone help me? Tell me why. And that's the sort of community we need to build. If we can bring in the environmental focused people into this sort of a forum, they probably have answers that they didn't realize were the answers that we're looking for. The more we talk, the more knowledge we realize that other people have got these questions that they've never understood. And when we all talk together, things become much clearer. So I just think it's great that we're doing this now.
Indeed. Thank you so much, William. Would any of the farmers or guests like to contribute anything at this point to this question? Such an interesting response there, William. So, Nick, would you like to say something? I see you there moving.
Yeah, sorry, pressed too many buttons there. Yeah, I agree with everything William has said, and Alain. I would just like to speak also from my work, where I try to blend my art and land management, and that is really reimagining the landscape. So I think it's very hard, especially for intergenerational farmers, to imagine the land any different than they have seen it throughout their lifetime. And I believe that we have absolutely no idea of the abundance, the potential that land has to offer us. I think it's been hundreds and hundreds of years since land has been able to express itself to its full capabilities. So I'm very interested in with our kind of the limitedness that we have, helping people reimagine their landscape. So part of what I do is I actually go onto the farm and I try and bring in my knowledge of design and ecosystem function, and I actually paint. I paint a map of the farm and where I think trees would function well, and how you could move livestock around, and how to stack functions on this landscape. I think imagination is, or creativity then, I suppose, is a different way of saying it. Being open to creativity helps free the land and really increases profitability and potential.
Lovely. Thank you. That's another outlook as well, another perspective on this. Definitely. The potential is huge. So going on to another question, and we welcome the questions in the chat, and at the same time, it's really interesting to have you guys as well responding as you are, Alain, which is really great, because there's some data that's like, it really depends, where you get the data from and what it's about. You can't just throw the data around when we're talking about different kind of management that has a whole different water cycle involved, for example. No? So it's great that that everyone here can share that information in the chat, and we can also help each other learn about how to interpret this kind of data and whether it's relevant to this conversation that we're having here. Obviously, resource consumption is nowhere near the same in conventional animal husbandry as it is in the kind of husbandry we're talking about here. So on to let's we're talking about practices here, and it's really interesting to have heard this summary of key practices in agroecology and for system regeneration. So what do you feel are the potentials that regenerative agriculture offers in bringing agroecology and nature conservation to conventional farmers? Max, would you like to go into that question? What are the potentials of regenerative agriculture in bringing those visions of agroecology and practices and nature conservation to conventional farmers? Oops, your microphone's off. Watch out.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I can share my point of view as a nature conservation NGO point of view, and as a more self-critical point of view, and especially talking about the reluctance to fully embrace regenerative agriculture. And this hesitation stems mostly from a few deeply ingrained concerns, but it is becoming clear that this mindset is limiting our ability to promote truly sustainable land management and agroecosystem regenerating and improving land management practices, especially on a broader scale. And one thing, for example, is the nature conservation side's fear of diluting organic standard. For one of the core concerns with many environmental NGOs is that regenerative agriculture could be perceived as a dilution of the organic standard. But organic farming has long held as gold standard for sustainable agriculture, with strict rules on inputs and processes. And the fear is that by supporting regenerative agriculture, which allows for more flexibility in inputs and focuses more on the outcomes like soil health, especially, we could also undermine the perceived value of organic farming. However, this is feared by maybe misplaced. And in my opinion, we need to recognize that regenerative agriculture and organic agriculture, as well as agroecological approaches, are not in conflict. Instead, regenerative agriculture practices can serve as a stepping stone or stepping stones towards more sustainable systems, particularly for conventional farmers who are not ready to make the full transition to organic farming, or don't even want to, or not yet. By clinging especially too tightly to rigid frameworks, as we did before, or still do in the vast majority, we risk annihilation or annihilating a large portion of these agricultural communities, especially the farmer-led ones, such as EARA, that could benefit from incremental improvements from each other. Another fear is, of course, the fear of greenwashing, which is in some cases, or in many cases, truly legitimate concern. But our response should not be to resist regenerative agriculture altogether. Instead, we should work to shape a narrative that ensures transparency and accountability in how regenerative agriculture practices are implemented. And by engaging with regenerative agriculture, we can help define best practices or principles and influence standards that prevent greenwashing while promoting real and truly environmental benefits to our agroecosystems. And another aspect is the missing link to soil biodiversity. Our fear of regenerative agriculture has also blinded us by the tremendous potential it offers in terms of restoring soil biodiversity, something that our movement has historically underappreciated. And soil biodiversity is a cornerstone of ecosystem health, affecting everything from nutrient cycling to plant health to above ground biodiversity, which nature conservationists are solely focused about, actually, and historically at least. And regenerative practices with their emphasis on practices such as no-till, cover crops, composting, directly improving soil biodiversity and therefore also soil health, an area where conservation or nature conservation efforts are often been lacking. And in my opinion, as to move forward is rather a call for collaboration in light of this self-reflection of, hopefully this is happening more broadly in German nature NGOs. It's clear that we need to shift our approach. Rather than viewing regenerative agriculture with skepticism or fear, We should embrace it as a complementary framework that can help achieve our broader conservation goals. And this involves collaborating with farmers, scientists, especially with farmers, because they are basically the scientists in the fields, and no one knows their local context better than the farmers, and use their experiences and their ecological successes for policymakers to create standards that uphold environmental integrity while offering flexible solutions for diverse farming contexts. And by engaging with regenerative agriculture, we can expand our influence and impact, helping more farmers to adopt sustainable practices. Referring to your question before, how we can enroll agroecological or agroecosystem improving practices to 9% of the land, but also while ensuring that soil health and biodiversity remain at the forefront of the agricultural transition. And this is, in my opinion, an opportunity to broaden our vision and work towards a more inclusive and effective conservation strategy.
That's amazing, Max, because that's exactly the philosophy that, and the vision that we all share here in the European Alliance for Regenerative Agriculture. That's exactly that. Let's add to the equation, and let's not let ourselves be distracted by the greenwashing efforts of large companies, which actually, if we let them, they will take over these terms, as they always have. They did with organic, they did with sustainability, they did with food sovereignty. They've stolen the words from the people. And as Vandana Shiva, who we had a couple of sessions ago as a guest in the room, as she always says, we need to recover the terms for the people. Regenerative agriculture is something that in the hands of farmers, the real farmers, it just has a whole other flavor, mindset, practice, and social impact and economic impact than the one that agro-industry is trying to sell to us. And I won't even mention the names of those companies, but they definitely are doing a good job at trying to greenwash and trying to really push their products with a new flag on top. So we just need to be more intelligent now that we have more resources and more online visibility, etc., that we can actually really connect with the people and have people understand what this is about. And that's where the key is as well, to have consumers understand what this is about and really look for this and look for their local farmers, right? So thank you for that vision, because that's what we're here to build together, is to really build the bridges so we can benefit each other. And I'd like to continue with you, Max. Oh, is that a hand up?
Yes, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yes, so about how to maybe convince conventional farmer to go to agroecology or regenerative practices, or story in France is tell that we can convince a lot of people when we have inspiring stories and documentation. And so we have to find and record stories about farmers, and to not only speak about the story, but also about all the numbers behind, not only the economical numbers, which are quite important, because it's maybe the first simple way to convince farmers that it's possible to manage other type of farm practices. But we also have all the numbers about maybe biodiversity or carbon in the soil or soil quality. And we have seen the big power of that for the farmers, and for the future farmers also. We have people who say, okay, thank you to have spread all these farm portraits, because we go to the bank and they accept my financing, because they have seen that there are so many other farmers who have do the same. So we can go. I can get funding for my farm I can have the help of the bank, for instance. But it's not only for the bank. It's also to let aware that it's possible. And today there is a big lack of visibility of all these regenerative systems. And we have make a quite good job, for instance, for market gardening, but there are a lot of other food system where we need to continue a nice documentation. And then when farmers, and we have already story to tell about region where there are so many people who are making conservation agriculture that there is no question for young people there about how to seed a corn or a wheat. Every people make conservation agriculture, so I do that, and I don't do that for my own conviction, but I do that because every people do that, so I do that. And there are kind of areas where people doesn't ask any more question about how to manage agroecology. For them, regenerative agriculture is agriculture. There is no difference, and that is nice stories we have who can be maybe the future at local area. We see that it's possible to transform fastly the vision we have and the common vision of agriculture we have.
Super. We're all nodding our heads here as well with you. Fantastic. Yes, indeed. And just while the rest of you are thinking of who's going to come in next or ask a question next, dear guests and speakers, I will drop in a little piece of data there that has come out from a study done in Spain by the Basque Center for Climate Change, which is a very renowned institution, amongst regenerative farmers. And they found that 93% of the farmers were very proud and very happy about their work, get up excitedly in the morning to deal with the challenges, knowing that there's going to be challenges, but still they're excited by their work and they're proud of what they give to society, which is an incredible figure when you think of how, how depressed and just how low the general farming population is feeling. So it really is, it's also that kind of data, of happiness and joy and pride and dignity coming back to the farming work that this kind of work in favor of life actually provides, happiness in your life as well. So I have another couple of questions here. You're answering the questions almost before we ask them. But how can then specifically nature conservations, NGOs, how can they help to regenerate agroecosystems and move away from blaming farmers for being the problem? Max, would you like to address that? How can we do that? How can we make farmers stop being the bad guy or the bad girl?
Yeah, just as I think it was Vincent said, we have to show the ecological successes of farmers because they're at the forefront of transitioning our food system. And as a point again from nature conservation is especially the attachment to legal frameworks such as the organic one. Many conservation NGOs, including our own, have invested decades to promote organic farming as a solution and actually the only solution to agriculture sustainability. And this has made us resistant to embrace new frameworks like regenerative agriculture, agroecological, or many else, which might seem like a threat to our established narrative. And yet this established attachment, to legacy framework can make us inflexible and prevent us from seeing the benefits of new approaches, such as regenerative agriculture and many more. And the ecological reality is that soils and ecosystems and agricultural systems are way too complex and too diverse and for a one-size-fits-all approach. And by sticking too rigidly to the organic narrative, we risk missing opportunities to support farmers who want to improve their practices but cannot meet the stringent requirements of organic farming or certification. And regenerative agriculture offers, as many more, offers a more inclusive and especially inclusive and adaptable approach, which can integrate well into organic principles while also providing flexibility for farmers in transition. And again, I think it's really important to tell the success stories of regenerative farmers. For example, the study that you just mentioned, that's amazing. If you can share it, I would be very, very interested. I can use it very well. And for example, for the study I conducted focusing on conservation agriculture that with 17 farmers, I visited 7 or 8 of them and conducted soil health tests on their field in comparison to the conventional farmer next door. And just not even talking about the laboratory results, is just walking on the fields and seeing how many butterflies, insects, and birds there are. You can tell just by walking on it how different the practices were, or the practice and then the ecological successes. And I would have loved to take some of my colleagues there, colleagues clinging to the organic narrative, basically, because that is what we are wanting to show and what we need to show. We need to show the successes of these farmers. And I think that's the best way to go for.
Absolutely. Lovely. And it's all a journey, isn't it? That's one of the principles of regenerative agriculture. It's a journey, and everyone's on a different point of that journey, and they will need different tools and a different reality to be able to walk the journey, instead of really strict rules that basically leave them out of the game, or just too discouraging to start with. So that leads us on to another of the difficulties and or challenges, let's say, of this kind of different farming, which is policy. And so, Alan, I'd like to ask you, what is needed from a policy perspective to have, this farming in favor of life and nature conservation aligned for agroecosystem health? What's needed from a policy perspective, from your experience?
Yes, it's indeed a very difficult question, because especially for the moment, because we have a new European Parliament in Europe. In UK it's different, the climate is more favorable, but in Europe it's complex, because the extreme right gained a lot of votes, and they are not in favor of our ideas, I must say, surprisingly, but it's so. They are for intensification, productivity, and so on. And before the election, the conservative right tried also to sabotage a bit some measures on biodiversity. It was almost okay, but they reduced the ambition of the initial law. But for agriculture and agroecology, it was certainly worse. Of course, I don't want to, take a position in the political era. I'm not against the right and in favor of the left party, certainly not. But that is just a reality that is also linked to a choice that has been done in the Green parties to be associated to the left, and I think that was a big mistake, because ecology is not from the right or the left. For instance, organic farming was supported by the extreme right in France in the beginning of the 20th century, and now it's a system that is mainly supported by left people, the bobo, as we say in French. So ecology is not from the right or the left, and ecology should be adopted by all parties, and that is one of the problems. And we have to be pragmatic in our approach if we want to promote nature conservation and regenerative agriculture and agroecology. As Vincent said, we have to speak about economy, about production levels, about, yes, profitability. I'm totally convinced that agroecology is more profitable than conventional systems in average, and we published a paper on that with 30 colleagues, where we compared studies that have been made in many countries in Europe, comparing conventional and agroecological systems, and in all cases, agroecological systems were more profitable. That is a very pragmatic and objective argument. We can also demonstrate that the nutrient density of food in agroecology is higher than in conventional products. You know that there are several arguments of this type that are not based on sensitivity, on passion, on science, and on the economy. The study of the TIFA scenario, called also an agroecological scenario for Europe in 2050, something like this, demonstrated also that agroecological systems can feed Europe and still export high quality products and reduce the impact on the environment, of course. So all these elements can be useful, but we should not hope too much from the politicians also. Agroecology is also a bottom-up system. That's the difference between Belgium and France, for instance. In France, they had a very good minister in charge of agriculture, who decided that agroecology should be the way forward. And his ideas percolate through the administration and so on. And that influenced a lot the research institute and the advisory institute and so on. In Belgium, we don't have this kind of politicians, but there is many initiatives from citizens, bottom-up initiative that change the world. Ideally, we should have both, of course. It would be nice to have a top-down and a bottom-up situation. But yes, I believe very much in citizen initiative in all aspects of the agro-food chain, not only in agriculture, but also in agro-food industries, in small scale, food processing and marketing. There are many technologies that can help, also new technologies. There is no magic solution. There is a complex of solution, and in fact, we have to use the cracks of capitalism. There are cracks in capitalism where that are a space of freedom when you can do something without fighting against any part of the society, and you can develop your business in these cracks and grow progressively and increase the cracks, because the idea is really to change the society for the best, and nobody believes anymore in a revolution. but one approach is filling these cracks, and another approach, more difficult, but that we should not forget, is developing symbiotic approaches with agro-food industries. It's not easy, but there are possibilities, and they have a lot of financial means. So that's for me the two approaches. And of course, in agroecology, Europe, it's the European Association that promotes agroecology, and we have many advocacy activities. So we are every week in touch with the European Commission and the European Parliament. I believe also that, or I have more hope in the Commission, so in civil servants, than in professional politicians. Because unfortunately, there are exceptions, but most of them try to renew their short duration contract, while civil servants have a long-term view, are more idealistic, have a better vision, and they have a huge power because politicians are moving, but civil servants remain for 30, 40 years in their position. So collaborating with civil servants is also essential.
Indeed. Thank you, Alan. That was just full of pearls of wisdom. So thank you so much. Making note here. I'd like to mention we're running out of time, so I'm going to ask the rest of our speakers to just think of a 30-second ending comments that you would like to share, or open questions even, because this is an ongoing conversation. As with farming, it's a journey and it's totally contextual, so there's no one size fits all, as someone said in the chat as well. And we just have to try from many angles and work from many angles. I love that idea that you said about filling in the cracks, that we can be the seeds in the cracks, the flower, and just amplify those cracks. That's a beautiful image. So I'd like to mention that EARA is working as well in the Brussels scene. I invite everyone to see the EARA proposal for the new CAP, which is on the website. And I'd like to ask Virginia if you would kindly put that in the chat as well. For everyone here as well present, any last links and things you want to put into the chat, this is the moment to do it. Yeah, and to invite you to see that proposal for the EARA, for the CAP proposal, because it is a very interesting farmer-led proposal that is about using technology well, and also about using the playing fields that we have right now, which is what it is. And so we need to play on that field, and so how to play that field so that it works better for farmers, and it encourages their transition towards more life-enhancing ways of producing food. That kind of answered a bit your question there, Martin. We may not be able to get to it, but there's a really good resource to have a look. And of course, hand in hand, hopefully, with the agroecology and nature conservation movements in Europe to advance these kinds of policies in Brussels too, as you said, with civil servants. After all, we're all people and humans, and we need to give tools to the people and humans who are running those institutions. So to our speakers, thank you so much. And would you like to have some last words? Perhaps Vincent, would you like to share some last words with the room?
Yeah, so last word, I will say that we have only to contribute. We have to continue this grassroots movement, bottom-up movement. And to continue, we have all to make little things, like to make a point on the map, and in the map to say, okay, I'm doing that, few words, few picture, and we have, for instance, this international people performance platform to do that, and we can also discuss further with EARA network how to success it. But for me, it's the basis, because when you know who is your neighbor, you can meet together, and we can continue to make this mycorrhizal network between all of us.
Beautiful. Thank you, Vincent. Marco, over to you. There you go. Since you put your heart on your sleeve, it's over to you.
So, yes, if I have the chance, I would like to let's say to share one of the messages that was into the chat from Nicolaus, that was correctly speaking about the importance of fungi and bacteria into the regeneration process. What I would like to remember to everyone is that regeneration is a journey, first of all. No one can say that he already get the end, or personally, this is what I think, and that the regeneration is deeply different for every single situation, according to the stage of the reaction, according to the regional situation in terms of water, in terms of mineral soil, in terms of the environment that is around you, and so on. So I don't want to be misunderstood when I said, like also Hélène said, that animals are essential for the regeneration process. This doesn't mean to me that, let's say, for example, fungi are not essential as well. What I mean is that there's no, that for me, from my point of view, agroecology should try to imitate ecosystems, wild ecosystems, and there's no wild ecosystems that doesn't have large herbivores, that doesn't need wild predators, that doesn't need fungi. So honestly, I think that is very important to keep in mind that we should mostly facilitate what we see outside, what we see in the nature, what we see in the wilderness, without thinking that there is no shortcuts at all, but also without thinking that there is just one actor that must be more important of the others. This is my personal point of view from my experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Having everyone in the field, in the playing field, participating, all of the elements are necessary, definitely. Thank you. William, final word?
Yeah, I would agree. We are within Savory, we often say that nature works in wholes, and we need to remember this, and that we need to create the whole that we're working with. We're not just regenerating agriculture, but communities, nature, rural infrastructure, rural communities. And the more alliances we can build in them, the more we can infiltrate the cracks to speed up progress, because we'll build a hyphae of like fungi throughout society and throughout our environments that will just become so powerful that no one can ignore it, and it'll happen. So that's what gives me hope.
Thank you, William, for bringing it together also beautifully. And we're all wanting to nurture and connect this network of fungi from all the different people, organizations, etc. So before you leave the room, and I'm aware of time and that people have other commitments and dinner and kids, etc. Would you please, everyone who's here, if you'd like to drop into the chat some words about how you're leaving this space, even if it's just one word to summarize your present state after hearing all of this, or a sentence or a key idea that for you has been a pearl this evening, it would be fantastic to read those. And we're aware that the conversation could go on all night. I mean, I'm really enjoying this and I'd love to continue. But at the same time, we do need to wrap it up. And we encourage you all to share this conversation with other people for real, and also to share this recording and to join the next sessions. The roundtable sessions continue. We have another 3 before Christmas. So please feel free to join. Every 2 weeks, we have these beautiful conversations. So thank you, everyone. There's any other speaker who wants to say something, who would like to say something before leaving? Please do. This is the moment. And in the meantime, please do share, everyone, your feedback basically on this session. How are we doing? How are you feeling? Like, what does this mean to you, this conversation? Nick, that was a hand. Go ahead.
Oh no, it was a wave. Good night. But yeah, just connectivity really. I think it's key. I would like to be part of facilitating pine martens or whatever native species to cross the whole county, you know, through a network of corridors. So yeah, have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Nick.
Yes, I just want to to thank you for this evening, because it's important to create a community of people who want to promote agroecological systems. And I didn't know any people in the virtual room except Vincent. So I'm pleased to meet you, and we have to reinforce the links between us if we want to succeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alan, for your perspective, your wisdom, your effort for your whole life, even beyond retirement. So thank you so much for that, for your inspiration. And for everyone for your time, because we know everyone's really busy. We really want to thank our guests. Everyone has come here as a guest very generously to spend an evening with us and leave a lot of other things aside for this hour and a half. And so we really, really appreciate that. And by everyone's generosity, we're able to build this conversation together. So thank you so much. Vincent, would you like to say something before we leave?
No, it's okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this organization, and it will be really a pleasure to meet you in next meetings.
Indeed, and hopefully in person soon as well, which is so fantastic. Max, some final words from you?
As I just stated in the chat, a lot of gratitude and reassurance to my motivation why I do this, even though I'm not working in a field like some of you do, even though I can't feel the ecological successes, but this is why I'm doing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So everyone, please be invited to follow EARA's work, to build this mycelia and to take these messages to every possible corner. So eara.farm is the website. You can follow us on LinkedIn as well. And the news is that we're going to be, we're organizing for a grand European tournée in 2025. So we will be visiting main cities in Europe and taking these messages and inviting local farmers, enjoying beautiful, local, regenerative, agroecological, organic food, and just sharing and building those connections also in presence, which is also fantastic. So thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you at next Roundtable sessions, and go well. May everyone's journey be fruitful and full of good food and good soil. Thank you, everyone. All right. So friends, William and Virginia, we're still standing. Excellent.
Thank you again.
Well done. We have Agustin in the room, is a friend from a farmer, cattle manager from Spain. So I'm very pleased to see Agustin there. Excellent. Hello, welcome.
Hola, hello, how are you? ¿Qué tal, Anita? How nice to see you. It's very inspiring. I arrived late, but what I heard was great. I'm also doing this course in regenerative agriculture and ganadery next week. So that's was a very good starter and a lot of motivation.
Excellent. Is
Thanks
that the
a lot.
course with Jaime Elizondo? Is that the one you're doing?
No, the one in Avila with Antonio Asolanilla, Antonio Tucci, and
Oh, wonderful. This is a great course that's happening with public funding, folks.
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing from the ministry. And so this is Patty, who you know, Patty Jimenez Amat, who's done all the work to get this public funding to do a free training for farmers, which is a whole series of sessions and 3 visits to farms, to regenerative farms. So, you know, we're slowly getting the interest from public administrations. It's a huge load of work in the background, but it's happening and farmers can actually join in. So I'm so glad you're going to do that. You're going to have such a good time. There's great farmers you're going to visit. Yeah. So we also need to do a tournée, right? William and Virginia, tournée of farms amongst Europe. We've been talking about that, right? Yeah. So Agustin, it's a pleasure to introduce you as an old friend as well to William, who's in Scotland. You weren't there at the beginning, so he was introducing himself there. Holistic management farmer and trainer in Scotland. And the lovely Virginia Tarditi, who is part of the team as well of EARA, who's supporting EARA from a technical point of view. And so she's the person who's technically getting these sessions going as well. So really, thank you, Virginia. I didn't want to thank you again at the end. I kind of forgot there were so many things to say, but
Oh, I wanted to thank you, actually. You did a wonderful job as always, but yes, thank you. And encantado as well.
Excellent. So was that a good session, people?
It was really nice. It was cozy.
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually, I have to confess, I was really nervous before today because Simon wasn't going to be in the room and they're his guest. And I was like, oh my God, you know, and if this suddenly explodes in some way, you know, what are we going to do? We're trying to build bridges with the agroecological movement and with the nature conservation movement, Agustin. So those are the people who are in the room, with the movements that can sometimes feel threatened by regenerative agriculture. So it's about, you know, part of the aim today was to give everyone the genuine feeling that we're actually on the same path, you know? So I think we were very much able to do that. I really loved the speakers. Weren't they good?
Very good. I love how Max explained this como diría, freno of the traditional organic agriculture and how this is so important to overcome, no? And also how regenerative agriculture is like a step in this ladder, no? Of moving towards organic farming. For instance, in my farm is now it's almost impossible to move to organic because I depend a lot of pienso, no?
Feed for the animals.
For feed for the animals, no? So it's so expensive that it's, the transition now it's almost impossible. But if I manage to make my grazing feed my animals most of the year, then transition to organic is easy, is much easier, no?
William, what would you say?
I think it was a good gathering because we've got to build these bridges with the more extreme elements of rewilding and no farming. And I think the agroecological approach is a good way to do it. And we've just got to keep, and there are younger ones coming forward. We really noticed at the groundswell in Scotland, there was a passionate rewilder who wanted all farming banned there. But her daughter was speaking on how they combine the environment and farming and is much more open to working together. And it, you know, I think the message is getting through that there are now enough farms farming in tune with nature that can be seen, that people are beginning to realize that farming doesn't have to be the chemical intensive monocultures that we've been told are the only way to feed the world. So we've just got to keep at it, and I think the message will just grow.
Wonderful. Indeed. Thank you for bringing as well the word hope into the room, William.
It's always hope.
You know? Yeah. Yeah. That was really, really great. So, friends, I must love you and leave you. I have some people waiting here for dinner very patiently. So, so let's go feed the humans.
Good job.
Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you again.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you so much.
Bye bye. Have a good night.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye. Very nice to meet you, William and Virginia.
Thank you, Amstein. Thank you for staying.